Let's go from soup to nuts in terms of how you set up a CPG food and beverage company and how you make it successful as a startup. The first and most important thing is to understand that food and beverage and startup are not necessarily synonymous. And that's where I think a lot of founders make this big mistake in terms of, I can make peanut butter or I can make pierogies and sell them, and therefore I must be a startup founder. You are the founder of a startup, technically speaking, but the definition of a startup is completely different when it comes to investors and the marketplace. Let me define it. A startup is typically defined by using technology to create an innovative solution to disrupt some type of industry and achieve hypergrowth. The key word is hypergrowth. It needs to explode and needs to grow really, really fast. And that is what gets you the billion-dollar valuation. That's what gets you the disruption, the changing of behaviors. Typically, food and beverage companies take time to really build and build and build, and they don't have that same sort of scalability like software does. In Shadi's point of view, in his example here, as a food and beverage company, CPG, if someone came and sent him a 10 million can order, he would be crushed. There'd be no way. In fact, he'd have to go source that capital and that money to fulfill that order. Now, that's a lot easier when you've got 10 million order. Instead of software that immediately you can service 100 users to 1,000 users without very much investment in infrastructure. AI compute is a completely different animal. Something that you all have to understand, that AI gobbles up so much in terms of resource that your app in AI could go viral, and the next morning you wake up and in your entire hosting budget has been killed, throttled, thrashed for the entire year. CPG, food and beverage, has the opposite problem with the ramp up, and therefore it doesn't scale as quickly. Therefore, startup investors are not going to look at your investment the same way. When does a startup investor look at CPG companies as a startup? When there's hypergrowth and there's disruption. For example, in the food and beverage space, I use this all the time because it's the darling, it's the easiest one to point to as a template. Arguably, it started with vitamin water a long time ago. There was this rapper named 50 Cent, and he invested in something called vitamin water, and we're just going to take flavored water, put vitamins in it. Back then, it was a novel concept, and the name was straightforward. Vitamin in water. It was in these bottles. It's better for you than Gatorade. Looked like Gatorade. Tastes like Gatorade. I don't know. I'm not a big fan. But it blew up, and then they pumped money into it, and then Coca-Cola bought them for, I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe $1 billion. The recent example is Liquid Death. Liquid Death is something contrarian to the marketplace, where they put out this can, and if you look up the story of Liquid Death, it's hilarious. It's amazing. They launched on a commercial, and the founder of Liquid Death wanted to do something contrarian, and he just came out with the craziest, zaniest marketing, and that's what his marketing team does. Let's come up with the craziest stuff. Let's put flaming skulls and flying eyeballs, and if you look at the can of Liquid Death, you see, and they started, and immediately it created a disruptive behavior that led to hypergrowth, meaning that people looked at it and they said, wait a second, there's water in a can that looks like it's an energy drink, and it's called Liquid Death, and it's water? Think about that. I need to Instagram this. People go along shopping mall lines, grocery lines, and they would see these cans on the shelf beside Evian, beside Dasani or whatever, all the other water that's out there, and they had to take pictures of it. You will not believe. And they just had to buy it to try it. Like, what is this? And then it just became cool to drink water from a can. Like, literally, kids, I've seen them, who would never drink water ever, would drink water if it was in a can. They wouldn't be caught dead with an Evian bottle in their hands, but they would drink water from a can. And that was a disruption. Another player in the same space that's kind of doing something different was Voss, right? If you look at Voss just got a lot of attention because they're just in a recent movie in one of the worst product placement examples you can imagine, but it got a lot of people talking about it. And Voss is sold in these glass bottles. And is it great water? I don't know. But would I pay just for the bottle? No, but clearly a lot of people are doing it. And also, there are other companies that have these amazingly expensive bottles of water, like $17 bottles of water in these glass containers with all these like different formulations, etc. So, customers are going to buy. Like, people will buy really expensive stuff for the status because it's going to change their behavior. There's lots of other reasons than if I just want to drink water. For example, I just got this big, massive water cooler, and I'm going to drink water because I'm thirsty. But this is a commodity. I went and spent the lowest amount possible to get the largest water jug that I possibly could. And a lot of people look at the size of this thing. They say, I would never carry that around. I carry this around. Why? Because I'm the type of customer that would change his behavior for something different like this. Let me take another sip. So that's when the world of CPG and that's when the startup world collide together, when startup investors can say this will go into hypergrowth, this will be disruptive enough to warrant an investment and go unicorn. And you have to really go unicorn because think about the profit margins in software. Software profit margins are like 65, 70%, sometimes 80%. In food and beverage, profit margins, you're lucky if you get 30%, 20%. You have to sell so much. But the brand can come up with other things, and that's the whole part of it is building the brand. It's the value of the brand. Milonga is going to do the yerba mate, and they've already expanded into different lines, and they're getting to mushroom-infused yerba mate. Let's talk about the other food and beverage company, Mudwater. I'm going to tell you a personal story. I invested in a company that combined mushrooms in coffee, and I thought it was the greatest thing because I tried the product. We're going to talk about product next, but I tried the product, and I said, this is absolutely amazing. We sat around, we got the different partners involved, we had a chemist there, and we did these different formulations, and we tried all the different blends, and I was like, I'm hooked. I love this stuff. Like I made it, I drank it, it made me feel really great, and it was just all these exotic mushrooms with all these great properties, such as for the immune system, alertness, brain function, put into coffee that was fair trade, and it was all ground together, and it was local, and it was fantastic until Mudwater came along. All right, so here I am. We are busting our tails trying to launch this, and we are getting lots of people interested. And then Mudwater comes along, and they just put all these different mushrooms in there. And I saw the social media thing, and it's this cool packaging with this own little blender, all that stuff. And so Mudwater, it was death to coffee, acidic coffee. We've created something that you can blend together. You can drink it hot, you can drink cold, changing customers' behavior. That company is going to get investment. All of these companies created products that got into the mind share, and developed a brand that customers wanted to get at, talked about on social media, so investors pay attention. Why? Because investors are saying it's not enough to have a good product. We need distribution. We need channels of distribution. And if there's a brand that can supercharge distribution that way, then investors are going to be more interested because that's math they can understand. They can say, all right, if all these people check out social media and they'll order online, and this is the cost of a Facebook ad, this is the cost of the Google ad, whatever you did, the social media, the user-generated content, the nano influencer program, then all I have to do as an investor is pour gasoline on the fire, and for every dollar, it will predictably produce $5. And when the brand takes off itself and there's new stories, then it'll produce $7, $10, and we'll continue going. And then we'll be able to introduce other products. That's how those worlds come together. That's the biggest mistake that CPG founders make, is they think that startup investors or the startup ecosystem will look at their company the same way as an app, as a SaaS, as a metaverse, blockchain, AI product. It's not the same thing. And that's what I want to say to our community right now. It is apples to oranges. Many principles transfer, which we'll continue to talk about, but they are two different things. So just get your mind and put it into a different frame, and we can help you with that here. If you have questions, let us know.